Few book titles will stop you in your tracks as writer Dara Horn's new collection of essays does. It's called People Love Dead Jews, Reports from a Haunted Present. And the title is just the beginning of a powerful analysis that will make you think and rethink representations of Jewish history and people, from Shakespeare to Anne Frank and beyond. It's been named to many Best of 2021 book lists, and we're pleased it brings Dara Horn to our airwaves tonight from Short Hills, New Jersey. Hi, Dara. It's really nice to meet you.
Thanks so much for having me.
So before we started this interview, I said, that title, it felt wrong for me to say it out loud. Why call this book that?
Well, if the title makes you uncomfortable, then you will be even more uncomfortable once you find out what is inside the book. My intention was to make people uncomfortable because the overarching idea in this book is that people tell stories about dead Jews that make them feel better about themselves and that usually involve erasing living Jews in the process. And that is what I was trying to call attention to. And so much of that process is only made possible by living Jews being forced to make other people feel comfortable about this problem. And that was what I'm sort of turning on its head by naming this book this rather audacious title.
What's been the reaction to the book?
I actually have been, I would say, pleasantly surprised, except it's not so pleasant. The reaction has been really overwhelming. I find that I have a lot of non-Jewish readers who are just sort of stunned, did not really appreciate the kind of problem this was, had no idea what was happening with that. I have many non-Jewish readers who feel like reading this book, they say this book is familiar to me from my own experience as a member of another minority or from experiences in my life where I felt the need to erase myself. And then I have many, many Jewish readers who have contacted me and sort of said, like, I have felt uncomfortable about this my entire life, and now someone has finally said it. Thank you. So I'll tell you that it's my sixth book. It's always nice when you have readers who appreciate your work, but in this case, I kind of wish readers liked this book a little bit less.
Why is that?
Because it shows me that this problem really was not all in my head. Like, this really is something that's very pervasive in our society.
And you work through some of these things that you've been thinking about for a very long time, but society has been telling you, oh, no, you have this kind of backwards. And you share a story of something that happened when you were younger, and you were with a group of young women, and they were surprised when you said that you were Jewish because they didn't think that you looked the way that Jews are supposed to look, because that's not how Hitler described them. I wanted to read just an excerpt from the book of what you write. So you write, like most people in the world, they had only encountered dead Jews, people whose sole attribute was that they had been murdered and whose murders served a clear purpose, which was to teach us something. Jews were people who, for moral and educational purposes, were supposed to be dead. You also shared that you felt haunted. What did you mean by that?
Well, what I want to point out in that passage really is that these people were not they weren't stupid. They weren't ignorant. They just had received this message that non-Jewish societies teach about Jews, which is Jews are people who were murdered, and that's it. And when I say I often felt haunted, my academic work is in Yiddish and Hebrew literature. It is true that Jewish history does have this sort of litany of persecutions that's part of it. And that's, you sort of can't really live your life as a Jew without having that be part of your life. But the reality, though, is that what's amazing about Jewish history is that not this history of persecution, but the history of resilience and endurance, and how this weaves its way as sort of this counterculture throughout the history of the West. And that's what these students really were missing, by thinking that Jews were sort of like this, people who were supposed to teach us something nice about humanity, as opposed to this sort of astounding culture that's a masterclass in resilience that really every person could learn from.
Well, speaking of history, something that a lot of us are taught in history is what happened to Anne Frank and the diary that came out. And you tell a rather shocking story of an employee at the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam. What happened there?
Yeah, so this was something that happened in 2018 at the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam. It's a museum where there are these tiny rooms where Anne Frank, this teenage Jewish diarist, and her family and others were hiding from Nazi persecution. It's now a blockbuster museum. They get millions of visitors a year. There was a young Jewish man who was working at this museum in 2018, and the museum would not allow him to wear his yarmulke to work. So that's this little skull cap that religious Jewish men often wear. The museum would not allow him to wear the yarmulke to work. He appealed this decision to the board of the museum, which deliberated for 4 months and then relented and let him wear his yarmulke to work. And I had seen this news story, and I just thought, 4 months is a really long time for the Anne Frank Museum to ponder whether or not it was a good idea to force a Jew into hiding. And, this incident really illustrated my point, which is, there's this need for living Jews to erase themselves in order for this story to go on about dead Jews that makes other people feel better about themselves.
And there has to be an impact on that individual. What impact is that?
Yes, on that individual, because he's being asked to erase himself, right? I mean, what you're basically being told is that, the dead Jews are here to teach us, all these wonderful lessons about humanity. And of course, we all love the dead Jews. Those are the nice Jews. We don't like the yucky Jews who are doing things like, I don't know, practicing Judaism. I mean, it just exposes this hypocrisy. And I imagine, many Jews are schooled in this acts of resilience. And I'm sure this young man, was able to go on with his career. But I mean, it's just what it really reveals is something less about this young man than about this society that we live in, where Jews are expected to sort of perform this role.
I wanted to read a passage from the book that talks more about Anne Frank. And you write, the line most often quoted from Frank's diary are her famous words, "I still believe in spite of everything that people are truly good at heart." These words are inspiring, by which mean that they flatter us. They make us feel forgiven for those lapses of our civilization that allow for piles of murdered girls. And if those words came from a murdered girl, well then, we must be absolved because they must be true. It is far more gratifying to believe that an innocent dead girl has offered us grace than to recognize the obvious. Frank wrote about people being truly good at heart before meeting people who weren't. I have a few questions to ask about that quote. But why do you think that line resonates with so many people? I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart.
Well, as I say in the passage you shared, it flatters us, right? It makes us feel like, we've been absolved for, our civilization's sins. Like, oh, look, even this murdered Jewish girl has absolved us of our sins, and I mean, look, there's this deep theology from Christianity that this is playing into. But I mean, the problem is, in order to treat Anne Frank's diary as a work of inspiration, you have to dump the whole reality. There's nothing inspiring about this story. This teenager was murdered. And I mean, the other thing that I write about in that essay is, she was able to write this line about people being good at heart 3 weeks before she met people who weren't. I mean, if she had survived these Nazi extermination camps, maybe she would have had something else to tell us.
Mm-hmm. And you also talk about her as a fuller individual, that she didn't want to just be seen as a child. And she also had aspirations of being a great writer, but because she was murdered, she wasn't able to pursue that.
Yes. Well, so, right, there's other line that often is plastered on the cover of that book, which is a line where she says, I want to go on living even after my death. And that's used by publishers as if to say, like, oh, look, her dream came true. This book was published. It's like, no, you kill someone when they're 15 and then you claim that this was their work. I mean, I was a writer when I was 15. What I was doing when I was 15 isn't what I'm doing now at 44. And yes, she had what's amazing about that diary is that she was already at 15 thinking like a writer. She started writing that diary at 13 when her family went into hiding. But, she had heard a radio broadcast 2 years later about how asking Dutch civilians to preserve personal war documents for documentation after the war. And at that point, she started revising her diary with an intent toward publication. I mean, those are sophisticated revisions. She also was working on novels. She was working on short stories. I mean, and this idea that we're now going to put up this diary is like, oh, look, it's this innocent child's voice, stammering from the abyss. It's like, that's not what was happening. This is someone who was developing an adult writer's voice, right? And who was fighting with every aspect of her being against that idea of being seen as this, like, oh, I'm this innocent little child who has no autonomy.
And I want to read another excerpt from your book because there's so much to unpack in this book. I wish we had more time. But you write, Holocaust novels that have sold millions of copies both in the United States and overseas in recent years are all uplifting, even when they include the odd dead kid. The Tattooist of Auschwitz, a recent international mega bestseller touted for its true story, manages to present an Auschwitz that involves a heartwarming romance. Sarah's Key, The Book Thief, The Boy in Striped Pajamas, and many other bestsellers, some of which have even become required reading in schools, all involve non-Jewish rescuers who risk or sacrifice their own lives to save hapless Jews, thus inspiring us all. What's wrong with that narrative?
Quite a few things. First of all, non-Jewish rescuers during the Holocaust, there weren't a whole lot of them. That was statistically insignificant. Frankly, as are stories of Holocaust survival was statistically insignificant for European Jews. I mean, there's very, very few Christian rescuers in the story of the Holocaust. And yet, that's what most of these novels are about, because we want there to be like a happy story about inspiration. So that's one piece that's disturbing. Another piece is this need that we have to turn this into a feel-good story. If you're learning about the Holocaust, this story should not make you feel good. It should not make you feel good. It is a story of the triumph of evil. Why are we treating it like it's a story of inspiration? That is this absurdity, and it's erasing the actual genocide of the Holocaust. The other thing that's erased is that, and by these stories about Christian rescuers, is the actual voices and autonomy of people who died in the Holocaust. And the way those people are portrayed is also extremely distorting, because generally what happens is that the content of Jewish culture itself is erased.
Do you think that this is more about, and it sounds kind of gross to say this, but do you think that it's done more to market the book so that it appeals to everybody?
Well, I think that's how the books are written, is to appeal. It's like, yay, it has universal appeal. But that idea of universal appeal is what I'm fighting back against in my book, because that universal appeal is itself has an evil component, because what basically we are doing is we are paying lip service to diversity in order to make people conform. And what I mean by that is that we are teaching anti-bigotry education by saying, oh, see this group of people who you might be bigoted against? You shouldn't be mean to those people, because those people are just like everybody else. They're just like you and me. Look, here's this kid on the soccer team who died in the Holocaust. Well, what was really destroyed in the Holocaust was 1,000-year-old Yiddish-speaking Ashkenazi Jewish civilization. Not like the culture of people who played on a soccer team. That's what was destroyed. And that's what we're erasing. And this idea that we only want to honor people who are just like everyone else, just like you and me. That is what I mean by paying lip service to diversity in order to make people conform. And that's where that damaging message is being spread to the way we talk about anti-Jewish attacks even today.
Well, since you brought up diversity, which is the word that it's just like makes me cringe, but there is an increased focus on diversity and inclusion in Canada. We're going to talk about Canada because this is where we live, but also in the United States where you are. Is that helping Jews at all?
Well, this is what's interesting about it, is that the conversation about Jews is always been this like, oh, look, Jews are just like everybody else. What I think is interesting is that message, which at times in Jewish history has been embraced by Jews, hoping for acceptance and knowing that the stakes in non-Jewish societies have often been high, that message itself is kind of the opposite of the message of Judaism, because Judaism, Jews spent 3,000 years not being like everybody else.
And being harmed because they weren't like everybody else.
Yes, right. I mean, and it's the content of, Judaism is a counterculture that runs through the whole history of the West. Jews have never wanted to conform, right, to the societies in which they live, right? That was never the goal of Judaism. And it was also never the goal of Judaism to proselytize. The idea was, this is who we are. We don't have to be exactly the same as you. It's, in a sense, a model for pluralistic societies today, which is like, you don't need your neighbors to be exactly like you and to see the world your way. And, when you say the word diversity makes you cringe, well, the reason it probably, I don't pretend to know your thoughts, but I think the reason it's become so cringy is because it is used to mean the opposite of what it should mean. Now we use it to mean we have a bunch of people with lots of different backgrounds who all see the world the same way and all think the same way. And that's what I'm pushing back against. And I think that's the challenge that Jewish culture presents to pluralistic societies now.
As the years go by, Holocaust survivors are dying. And one of the ways that we've been told as a society to remember what happened during the Holocaust is to go to Holocaust museums. But you actually say, you question how effective that is. What do you mean?
Well, I think a lot of these museums were built at a time where the idea was, their very well intentions was to sort of inoculate the public against anti-Semitism. But I mean, I know that certainly in the United States, a lot of these museums were built in the 1990s. We now have, it's 30 years later, sort of levels of anti-Semitic hate crimes and things like that are much higher than they were 30 years ago. So I think we can sort of question whether this is really effective or not. Another thing that I often, I've been writing books about Jewish culture for 20 years. And what I often would do is ask my readers, how many people here can name 3 concentration camps? And that's something many readers can do. I often then would ask readers, how many people here can name 3 Yiddish writers? 80% of the people who were murdered in the Holocaust were Yiddish speakers, a famously literary civilization. Why do we care so much about how these people died if we're not at all interested in how these people live? And I think that what's missing from sort of, education about, if you really want to inoculate people against anti-Semitism, how about curiosity about the content of Jewish civilization? Why would that not be part of what we want to teach people in living in a pluralistic society?
Well, you write that when it comes to education about Jews, so much focus on the Holocaust can lead to people shrugging off other forms of anti-Semitism, saying, well, it's not the Holocaust. What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I think that, anybody who learns about the Holocaust, in a sense, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like people tell stories about dead Jews that make them feel better about themselves. You go to a Holocaust museum, you will probably feel sad about what happened, but you also feel good about yourself because you're like, I would never do something like that. Like, well, yeah, okay, you probably wouldn't, but that's kind of a high bar, right? Are we really saying that, anything short of murdering 6 million people is kind of okay? Because that's sort of what happens, because then what you find is that when there's, in the book, for example, I list, I give a list where I'm like, here are a bunch of things that are not the Holocaust. And it's everything from, trolling Jews on social media to expelling Jews from entire countries and seizing all their assets, which happened in about a dozen countries in the Muslim world in the 20th century. That's something we never talk about. And because, it looks great compared to the Holocaust. Look, they didn't murder all those people. Hooray. And, that's the thing that I find really disturbing is that, you're going to set this ridiculous bar. We also now have something that we often do with public figures where if somebody says something vaguely anti-Semitic, the remedy is take them to a Holocaust museum. The problem with that is that basically is cost free for that person because it does not require them to engage with living Jews.
Well, you document several times in the past few years when Jews were murdered in America with one attack in your neighborhood. And you write that people tend to justify it even in mainstream media. How do they do that?
So I was referring to a series of attacks that were against the Hasidic community in New York and New Jersey, the area where I live, just before the pandemic. And I read the news coverage of these attacks. I almost couldn't find a news article that didn't say something derogatory about the community being attacked in the process of reporting it. So the way they do it is they'll say something like, oh, this Hasidic Jewish community was gentrifying a minority neighborhood, which is kind of remarkable because, these are highly visible members of the world's most historically persecuted minority. These aren't white hipsters. And also is there this murderous rage against gentrification where people are, bursting into coffee shops with automatic weapons? Because that's really not what's happening. And why are we pretending that it is? Or else they'll say something like, oh, there was this zoning battle between Hasidic and non-Hasidic residents of this town. And I'm like, okay, but we're talking about a machete attack here. Do we normally resolve municipal disputes with a machete?
And the answer is no,
what's going
of course.
on is, yeah, right. I mean, this is victim blaming, right? I mean, it's like if you were writing a news article about a woman who was sexually assaulted, would you be spending half that article talking about what she was wearing and how she provoked the attack? Mm-hmm. I don't think you would.
We talked about social media a little bit. You touched on that and the media itself. Another play, and you also mentioned, what life is like for people with Jewish names on social media. The other, I guess, part of this conversation is politics. We don't have a million hours, but do you You know, when it comes to anti-Semitism, hate is hate. But is there a difference between anti-Semitism coming from politicians on the left as opposed to those on the right?
The excuses which they give for it are different, but otherwise it's not different. I mean, I think that the reason that anti-Semitism is so attractive to people is
You say it's
because
attractive?
it, yeah, well, I think the reason, well, I mean, it's not attractive to me. It's hopefully not attractive to most people. But the reason people are attracted to it is because it basically allows you to blame somebody else for your problems, right? Everybody wants to blame someone else for their problems. So the way you do that might be different on the right versus on the left. The thing that is a little bit unusual about anti-Semitism among bigotries is that it's a conspiracy theory. So what that means is it's not only, oh, these people are inferior to me, but it's also, oh, these people have too much power. And so then, you can make yourself look like you have, you're like punching up if you're attacking Jews, like you're speaking truth to power. I mean, this is very, very old anti-Semitic trope. So that's, I think it was, about a century ago that I forget which thinker who calls anti-Semitism the socialism of fools. So, there's that kind of dynamic. It's very flexible. It works on the right or on the left.
You mentioned that at the very beginning, we talked about you feeling haunted and how you're very aware of time. And as time marches on, how things might change, but they don't really change. Having written this book, have you come to a place where you feel maybe less haunted?
I feel more aware of certainly what my own ancestors in the past have gone through. I feel more tied to that history, but I also feel, in a sense, more hopeful than when I published it, than when I wrote it. I feel more hopeful now than I did when I wrote it because, in some senses, as I mentioned earlier, like I wish people liked it a little less. This is a very familiar feeling to a lot of people. But one thing I've encountered also is how many people in our society, and this is throughout North America, have been sort of stuck in this dynamic for many reasons. It's true for many minorities. It's true for many people in their own lives who have been sort of put into this position where, they're asked to erase their own identity in one way or another in order to, gain public respect. And I think that, we're now at a point in our conversation in pluralistic societies where maybe it would be possible to push past that. And so that's something that, I do feel hopeful about for the future.
Dara, thank you so much, and congratulations on the book. It is essential reading. It will make you uncomfortable, but I think that is the point, and we have to question why we're feeling uncomfortable. Thank you. Really do appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.